All right, let's get into it. This is the story of a band that, well, they started out as this hippie folk duo and then kind of accidentally invented a whole new kind of rock and roll. We're talking glitter, platform boots, and a fan frenzy that honestly gave the Beatles a run for their money. This is the absolutely explosive and ultimately tragic story of T-Rex.
Now, what's really fascinating is who said this. This isn't some pop star talking. This is James Williamson from the Stooges, one of the rawest, most foundational proto-punk bands of all time. It just goes to show you, right from the jump, that T-Rex's impact went way beyond the pop charts. They were influencing the very artists who wanted to burn the whole system down.
So that really is the big question, isn't it? How on earth could one band be the blueprint for both the shiniest pop music and the grittiest punk rock? Well, to understand that, you have to realize that T-Rex wasn't really just one band. It was two.
And that brings us to the first chapter of this story, where we really dig into the band's radical transformation. And look, this isn't just a simple lineup change. It's a genuine Jekyll and Hyde story in the history of rock and roll.
This right here just lays it all out, the Great Divide. On one side, you've got Tyrannosaurus Rex. They were an acoustic duo, super beloved by the legendary DJ John Peel and the whole London underground scene. The frontman, Marc Bolan, sang these really surreal, mythological lyrics over his acoustic guitar while Steve Peregrine Took played the bongos. But then, 1970 hits, and boom, everything changes. Bolan plugs in an electric guitar, shortens the name, and T-Rex is born, a full-on, four-piece rock machine built for monster pop hits and total mass hysteria.
But you know, this transformation, it was about so much more than just the music. It was the spark, the little flame that ignited an entire cultural movement.
So, how did this all happen? Well, Bolan was pretty strategic about it. Shortening the name? Instantly more radio-friendly. Electrifying the sound? That gave them some serious, raw power. He brought in Steve Curry on bass and Bill Legend on drums to create a real rock rhythm section. But that last step, step 4, that was just pure, beautiful chance. Right before a performance on the TV show Top of the Pops, his stylist, Chalita Secunda, just spontaneously dabbed some glitter under his eyes. The public went absolutely nuts, and a whole look, a whole aesthetic was born in that one single moment.
And that, right there, is glam rock. You gotta remember, this was a total rebellion against the super serious, all-denim authentic rock bands from the late 60s. Glam was theatrical, it was androgynous, and more than anything, it was just fun. It was pure escapism for British kids. And T-Rex, they weren't just a part of it, they were the pioneers. They were patient zero of the glitter explosion.
This reinvention didn't just bring them a little success, it launched them into the stratosphere. They created a cultural phenomenon that would define an entire era. This was their golden age. I mean, the chaos surrounding the band got so intense it actually needed its own name. Their publicist BP Fallon absolutely nailed it with T-Rextasy, which was the perfect throwback to Beatlemania from the decade before. We are talking a full-on hurricane of screaming fans, sold-out arenas, and just this all-consuming level of fame.
And the charts from this time? They just tell a story of complete and total domination. Between 71 and 72, T-Rex was simply unstoppable in the UK. They rattled off this incredible string of 11 top 10 singles, which included 4 #1 hits in a row. These weren't just songs, they were the anthems for a generation. And this is what that phenomenon looked like. Marc Bolan in his absolute element. The iconic corkscrew hair, draped in satin and velvet, holding his guitar like it's a weapon. He wasn't just a musician at this point, he was a self-made rock and roll deity, the 20th century boy he sang about, and he was the undeniable, glittering center of all that T-Rextasy. But you know how these stories go in rock and roll. Those dizzying heights were followed by a really fast and frankly heartbreaking fall. You can actually see the instability starting to set in right here on this chart. See those solid, consistent lines for the classic lineup up to 73? Well, after that, you see it all start to fracture. The drummer Bill Legend leaves, then the percussionist Mickey Finn. The lineup becomes this revolving door as Bolan tries to recapture that old magic, trying out soul and funk, but the massive hits, they just started to dry up. And just when he was having this little creative comeback, he was touring with the punk band The Damned and even had his own TV show, tragedy struck. Just 2 weeks before he would have turned 30, Marc Bolan was killed in a car crash. And since he was the band's only constant member, its only songwriter, its visionary, well, T-Rex died with him. But the story really doesn't end there, because while the band itself was gone, the music and the influence, they were about to become immortal.
I mean, just look at this list. It is absolutely staggering. You've got everything from the raw punk of the Ramones and Susie and the Banshees to the iconic indie rock of the Smiths, REM, and the Pixies. And then you go all the way to the Britpop of Oasis, who, by the way, famously just lifted the riff from Get It On for their song Cigarettes and Alcohol. The DNA of T-Rex is literally everywhere in modern music. And this quote from the punk icon Joey Ramone, it just gets right to the heart of it all. Bolan's appeal was that he was completely unique. His style, that mystical quality, he showed an entire generation of outsiders that, you know what, you could be different, you could be flamboyant, and you could still be a massive rock star.
And then, in 2020, that incredible legacy was finally, officially set in stone. The band's classic lineup got rock's highest honor, a long-overdue recognition of their massive, undeniable impact on music history. And here they are, Bill Legend, Mickey Finn, Marc Bolan, and Steve Curry. The four guys who for one brief, shining moment were the biggest band in the world and completely changed the way rock and roll looked and sounded forever.
So that brings us all the way back to our big question. Were they a pop fairy tale full of glitter and fame, or were they something a little more rebellious, a primal spark for the punks that came after them? The incredible thing about T-Rex, and really the true mark of their genius, is that somehow they were both.